Hello everyone, my name is Muoi, a final year PhD student from the National University of Singapore. I am going to present our papers on the routing-aware peerings against network-Eclipse attacks in Bitcoin. Today I work with Akshaye Shenoi, also from the National University of Singapore, and my advisors, Mr. Kang, who is now at KAIST. When it comes to securities of blockchain networks, one of the most dangerous threats is partitioning attacks. In partitioning attacks, the adversaries isolate targeted victims from the rest of the peer-to-peer networks. Once the victim is isolated, the adversary can arbitrarily inject, drop, or delay the communication between the victim and the peer-to-peer networks and launch several follow-up attacks against the victim, such as double spending attacks or censoring transactions. See what happened in 2020 in an Eclipse attacks against Monero, a popular cryptocurrency that dropped the transaction of several users. There are a few partitioning attacks introduced in the last few years, and most of them have been already mitigated effectively. They include a botnet-based Eclipse attacks introduced at USENIX Security 15, which doesn't work anymore because to date all exploited vulnerabilities have been fixed. Another existing work is the route hijacking attacks appear at IEEE S&P'20. However, the attack is immediately detectable and attributable. More recently, we presented the Erebus attacks at IEEE S&P'20. The Erebus attacks is stealthier than existing attacks and harder to prevent. In this talk, we discuss the practical countermeasures to these Erebus attacks. The Erebus attacks is a network-Eclipse attacks in Bitcoin. Let me briefly explain how it works. First, you need to know that Bitcoin loads you an internal database to store IP address of other node and select its peers. Second, the Erebus attacker is a malicious autonomous system or AS. In this attack, the adversary spoofs the peer identities using the IPs behind herself in the victim views. These IP, which are shown at the top of the figures on the left-hand side, are called shadow IPs. Then the adversary slowly inserts shadow IPs into victim database and waits for the victim to select those shadow IPs. When this happens, the attackers become the man in the middle of all peer connections of the victim, and the victim is Eclipse. Countering Erebus attacks is challenging because the attacker with the network capabilities only exploit the permissionless natures of Bitcoin peer-to-peers to find millions of shadow IPs to eventually eclipse the victim. Compared to about 10,000 nodes in the current Bitcoin network, millions of identities is a huge number. There already exists some approach for countering the Erebus attacks, such as some workaround like VPN, Tor, or whitelisting some reputable node. However, such naive solutions require some external service in the current Bitcoin system. Also, the Bitcoin communities has quickly implemented some protocol tweaks to make the adversary spend more attack execution time, such as increasing the number of outbound connections from 8 to 10, or use IP to AS mapping in the peer database. However, they are not complete solutions. Indeed, we evaluate the effectiveness of available protocol tweaks, and here are the results. So y-axis shows the attack success rate of the Erebus attacks, and lower values show better defense. For the accurate definition of the attack success rate, please refer to our papers. Here, we evaluate some tweaks on how peer IPs are managed in the database, and some tweaks that improve the peer selection procedures. As we can see from the chart, all available protocol tweaks show only marginal effectiveness against the Erebus attacks. Knowing the limitation of existing countermeasures, we turn our attention to a known solution from literature that has been used to handle similar attacks launched by network adversary, which is route-aware peering. Route-aware peering or RAP is frequently used to avoid on-path network adversary, especially in Tor systems such as NAS Tor or Counter Router, and so on. Under RAP, peers are selected based on the routing paths to the peers. Let us see how it works in Bitcoin with the previous example. Here, the victim used RAP before establishing the peering connections. RAP calculates the routing paths from the client to the peers and help to detect attackers appearing on all the paths. So the Erebus attacker can be easily detected, as you can see from this example. Are we done? Can RAP prevent Erebus attacks simply like that? Unexpectedly, the answer is no, unfortunately. We found a subtle problem with this approach. As always, the devil is in the details. In particular, we found some non-identities of RAP implementation. Assuming a victim node is getting the routing path to the shadow IPs on the right-hand side. Here, RAP can get the routes by measuring the traffic route using some probing tools such as trace route. However, because the Erebus attacker is on the path, the attacker can easily manipulate the result or even drop the probing. Hence, the route measurement cannot be used in practice. Alternatively, the victim can estimate the forwarding route or query the route from the local routing tables. However, the estimation can be inaccurate and miss the on-path attacker, and this leads to some shadow IP can be misidentified. Worse, those misidentified IP can be exploited by Erebus attacker. We are now aware of this RAP defense. In particular, smarter Erebus attackers can use only misidentified shadow IPs to undermine RAP. The attacker first selects the misidentified shadow IPs by emulating the best RAP implementation. Then, the Erebus attacker inserts only the misidentified shadow IPs to the victim. So, can RAP prevent these smarter Erebus attacks? To answer this, we perform a large-scale experiment of about 6,000 scenarios in which the attackers are top 100 AX and victims run at 59 different locations, such as popular cloud networks. And here is the result. We find that the Erebus attacks against the baseline client are successful in 55% of the cases. When the client implements RAP, the attack success rate decreased, but to 33% only. The results show that, in contrary to our expectation, RAP alone is insufficient to prevent the Erebus attacks. So, why does RAP not work in Bitcoin? First, route estimation is known to be imperfect, and even with a state-of-the-art implementation, here is the evaluation of the misread of 4 state-of-the-art route estimation approach. It shows that there are at least 6% of the shadow IPs are misidentified. And here is the distribution of the numbers of shadow IPs and misidentified shadow IPs. We can see that the number of misidentified shadow IPs is significantly smaller than the number of shadow IPs. However, the attacker still can find tens of thousands of spoof PI identities using the misidentified shadow IPs. This explains the successful Erebus attacks that we saw in the previous slide. Knowing that none of the defense is sufficient alone, we attempt to make the best available solution. For the sake of comparison, we show again the success rate of the attacks against the baseline client is 55%. First, we find that RAP must be customized accordingly to each Bitcoin node topological location. For example, we need different RAP customization for 2 different nodes, in which one node is in a highly well-connected network, while the other node is in a single host network. Please see our paper for more detail on this. We find that the location customized RAP profiles can reduce the attack success rate to 9%. Second, we need to evaluate all combinations of protocol tweaks to find out the most effective one, because adding more tweaks doesn't guarantee a better defense. The most effective tweaks combination that we can find reduce the attack success rate to 21%. And lastly, we find that when combining RAP and tweaks together, we have the most effective defense so far. Thus make the attack success rate drop to only 3%. In conclusion, contrary to our expectation, routing aware peering or RAP alone is insufficient to prevent the Erebus attacks because there are no perfect error-free route estimation for RAP in practice. And smarter Erebus attackers can exploit RAP weaknesses to undermine it. However, we saw that most Bitcoin can be protected from the Erebus attacks when RAP is customized for each Bitcoin node and when it is combined with available protocol tweaks. For more updates on the deployment of RAP and other protocol tweaks, please visit our website with the following link. And for that, I conclude my presentation. If you have any questions or comments, please email to motion@com.nus.edu.sc. Thank you.